Welcome to the Peds Hub podcast. We are a group of paediatric trainees in the Southwest who every month review a selection of articles that we find useful for our practice.
These are taken from the BMJ, Archives of Disease in Childhood Journals.
For the full articles, please go to their website, journals.bmj.com. Please note, these are our own opinions and are produced for educational purposes only. They are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
Thanks for listening.
Hi, I'm Bex, and I'm a paediatric registrar on UP at the moment. I'm going to discuss a review paper entitled Vulnerabilities in Clinician-Parent Exchanges and the Cascade of Communication Traps. And this is a paper by Emanuela Ferretti and colleagues at the University of Ottawa. I like this paper. It's very practical and it puts words to something that I occasionally feel with parents. There's that look that they give when they're just not understanding the situation and what's happening to their child. Sometimes I don't know how to rectify it. The paper starts by discussing the importance of creating a therapeutic alliance with parents. Without this, we run the risk of failing to communicate important information and decisions to parents. The poor communication could lead to mistrust between parents and the medical team, and so ultimately that will have a negative impact on patient care. The main failures of communication between doctors and parents occur when we do not allow enough time for parents to talk. This is definitely something I've become more aware of working in the ED. It's fast-paced. You normally have a number of children you're looking after, some of them who are very sick, but without an appropriate amount of time dedicated to allaying fears, the parents are just going to come back. So providing families with time to talk, time to tell their story and relay their worries is hugely important. Other issues that were highlighted in some of the qualitative studies that this paper reviewed of doctor-parent interactions included that doctors just do not answer the parents' questions, or when they gave answers, they were long-winded and pretty vague. The paper highlights 3 cues to help evaluate how well parents understand what we have communicated. We need them to understand the disease models, and we need to understand their health beliefs to provide effective communication. These 3 cues, handily remembered by A, B, and C, are a prompt to us to think, is my communication effective? So A stands for affect. What is the parent's affect? Do they look shell-shocked? Are they crying? How have the parents responded to the piece of information that you have given them? Is it proportional to what you have said? And who else is having an effect on their emotional state? B stands for behaviour. How do they look? Look at the parent's posture. Look at their eye contact. Look at their hands. What are they doing? And then finally, C is cognition. Do they understand what you have said? Is the conversation bidirectional and demonstrates that they have retained what you've been telling them? They use the analogy of a finger trap to describe communication with parents that is deteriorating. If you've ever had one, I'm thinking on 90s Christmas crackers, the finger traps. It's this little cylinder that you put on the ends of your 2 fingers, and as you pull away, the trap tightens around them. The key to getting it off is to relax and to push the opposing fingers inwards, and the trap will widen and come off. This is meant to be a metaphor for difficult conversations with parents during these really high stress situations. Poor communication will cause you and the family to pull away, and that's going to create greater tension and mistrust than leaning in. Next is an example of a situation where you can hear that the finger trap is tightening and tightening. The situation is a child with a life-threatening asthma exacerbation, and they've just been transferred from a district general hospital to the tertiary PICU. And finally, their asthma has been so severe that they've needed urgent intubation and ventilation. So this will be the mum speaking to the doctor in this situation, and she says, looking very upset, "Can someone tell me what's happening to my boy? Can he breathe? Is he going to be okay?" And the doctor replies, "Your son is intubated now, so the machine is breathing for him and he's receiving medications to help relax his airways." The mum replies to this, "He was awake at the other hospital and now he's not. Is he going to die?" And the doctor will reply, "It's difficult to say. He's on a ventilator now and it's breathing for him." And the mum replies, "Well, how are you going to make him better? He's worse now." And the doctor in response to that would say, "In the PICU, we see lots of cases like this. He's stable at the moment." Mum's getting angry now, raising her voice. "Do you even know what you're doing? Who are you?" And the doctor's going to reply, "I'm a senior fellow in the PICU." Mum's final response, made with no eye contact, "I want the consultant here. I want them to tell me what's happening to my boy." You can see the overarching theme of this conversation is about trust. The mother wants to know if she can trust this doctor to care for her son, and the doctor fails to establish it by not answering her questions appropriately or trying to create a therapeutic alliance. The doctor focuses on describing sort of literally what's happening to her son, i.e. talking about intubation and how the intensive care is used to this, rather than addressing the first question. By doing that, it sets the mum up to question the doctor and whether they can appropriately care for her son. Likewise, the doctor may feel that the mum is not listening to them, and therefore both parties are pulling back from one another. The paper describes the differing mental models of the doctor and the parents and how they could create conflict. Psychological studies demonstrate that humans prefer small and short wins over a loss that might over the long term actually be of more benefit. So in this situation, intubation and ventilation is a step backwards for mum, but actually in the long run will ideally gain control of this life-threatening asthma attack, and it will have better long-term consequence for the child. But you can see how the doctor and the mother's mental model are now in conflict. So to summarise, the family's mental model is going to be, what can you do for my son? And the doctor's is, what is wrong with their son and how can I fix it? And if both parties aren't getting useful information that aligns with their mental model, they'll pull away. So based on the rest of the paper, I've created some tips and some suggestions for answering mum's questions in this scenario and how we can go about creating a therapeutic alliance, bearing in mind that we're always going to be assessing affect, behaviour and cognition along the way. So number 1, be aware of your body language, never mind the family's. This includes the tone of your voice, your facial expression, and think about how a mask will impact that, and the position of your body when speaking to them. 2 is go back to medical school and think about what we used to say in all those OSCEs. Explore the parents' ideas, concerns and expectations. That's how you're going to uncover their mental model and acknowledge how difficult this is for them at the very start. This is going to start to create that therapeutic alliance. 3 is give only specific and relevant information. So unless the mum is specifically asking for the mechanism of action of ketamine, she doesn't need to know that in detail. She wants to know how her son is doing. So don't get too bogged down in the details unless it's specifically asked for. 4, be honest and ensure that you answer the family's questions. Don't avoid it. Be empathetic and explain the uncertainty, but be honest about the situation if things are bad. So in answer to, is he going to be okay? Will my boy die? Your response could be something along the lines of, your son is really unwell at the moment with a serious asthma attack. I'm sorry, but I can't be more certain about what's going to happen. 5, take ownership when speaking and describe how you feel. For example, and this would help to validate their concerns, I understand that you're worried. I am too, because we've had to take over breathing for him with a tube. 6, adapt to the pace of the conversation. I think I'm quite guilty of this, particularly in very stressful situations and on podcasts. I will talk very quickly. So pause frequently to allow time for parents to digest what you've said and ask questions. And you can signpost this, let's take a break, let's take a moment to pause. 7, if the parents' questions are unclear or you cannot work out their meaning, reflect back what the parents have said. For example, you've told me your son was breathing before and now he's got a tube. Has someone explained to you why that's happened? 8, if parents ask you repeatedly the same question, this means their concerns have not been addressed and the information that you've given is just not being understood. 9, What to do if you don't know the answer to their questions? Well, be honest. Repeat the question back to them so that parents know you've heard. Reassure that you care about their question and you want to answer them as honestly as possible. And ask if you can come back to it after thinking or discussing with someone more senior. Finally, number 10. It might be that parents ask you multiple questions all in one go. That's okay. Sometimes it can be useful to jot all of these down, and then that helps to remind you to go back to it. Summarise at the end and clarify if there's anything you've missed. I've really enjoyed this article because it reminded me that my thought process and the parents often could be very different. So when meeting with them, particularly in very high stress situations, it's important to bridge that gap by providing answers that are honest but that ultimately address their concerns. Using the acronym A, B and C, so reading the parent's affect, the behaviour and their cognition, this will help to understand their illness model. I think it encourages doctors to lean into difficult conversations and avoid the communication traps that we've described above. All of this develops a strong therapeutic alliance between parents and doctors, and ultimately, I think that's going to improve their child's care. Thanks so much for listening. Take care.
That's all for this episode. As always, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to get in touch via our email address podcast@pedshub.co.uk or via the PedsHub website. Equally, if you'd like to get involved, we always welcome your voices, so please do get in touch.
Thanks for listening.